Is our eternal gear search helping or hurting our creative inspiration? We'll talk about it today on Mule School. So the other day I was having an interesting text conversation with a customer. It was about what string gauge and tuning he wanted his resonator sent with. And that's a very normal conversation to have, but what made this conversation interesting was this particular customer plays in a very popular band. He wrote a song that, even though it's 21 years old, still gets 100,000 people every Saturday morning singing together. And he wasn't sure what string gauge he used on his acoustic guitars. And that's something that I've run into fairly regularly with pro players. In the beginning, I wanted to impress them. I thought they would be the most picky customer. I need this guitar specifically this way for this specific job. And so I would rattle off options and little things I could do as an instrument maker to make it just for them. And to a T, every single one of them said, I don't know anything about that stuff, just build what you build and I'll figure it out. And I think there's a really interesting lesson there, is nothing is free. Everything costs something. And there's a really interesting story in Malcolm Gladwell's book called Blink that illustrates this really well. And this foreign country needed to dispose of some nuclear waste, and they went to a city and said, here's a bunch of money, will you let us dispose of this waste here? And they said no. And they went to a second city and they offered them money and then threw in some patriotism, and the second city said no. And the third city, they left out the money, they leaned hard on the patriotism, and they said yes. And this story illustrates something that they found in brain scans, saying that there's two different parts of our brains that control generosity and self-benefit. And those two parts of our brains can't really play well together. They can't operate at the same time. It's either or. And I think there's a connection there with our our never ceasing search for gear and what that gear is used for, playing music, inspiring new sounds. With pro players, they're so single-minded, creative inspiration. How do I create an environment to inspire new musical choices that they don't even have time to understand string gauge or, magnets in the pickups or all of those little things that I found myself really overemphasizing. And I think the question to ask is our gear search helping or hurting our creative inspiration? Are we using it to push ourselves out of ruts, to find new sounds, to create musical choices? That process might be a little bit uncomfortable if we're picking instruments or gear that really throws us off, but I think there's a lot of value in that. Or are we using our gear choices to kind of subconsciously control the outcome, and we're just going to optimize ourselves into this rut that we find ourselves in? So I don't think the gear search is bad. That's not what I'm saying, but I think understanding that there's a balance there, that we can't do both things at the same time. And I think that's a great lesson of growing up, right, is that our resources are finite. We spend half our life acting like we've got all the time in the world and all the energy, and we've got, we can spend it all with everybody that we want, and we spend the second half of our life learning that's not really the case. We have finite resources, and we have to make tough decisions. I think keeping that in mind will get us the best balance of using gear for its real purpose, creating new musical choices while we play music.